भद्रं कर्णेभिष्णुयामदेवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. So we have been having a very involved discussion on the understanding of Shraddha, the concept of Shraddha, how to assimilate this, because as the Bhagavad Gita also says, it is by far the the most salient important qualification for gaining self knowledge, because without this Shraddha nothing else is possible. And because one has to have trust in the source, that is you know that is the giving that is the removing the ignorance. And so therefore this Shraddha becomes very important, because without trusting the source you cannot go any further. No, nothing can be done. And you know the trust in the source is difficult. Why? Because you don't operate that source. That source is the Veda, handled by a teacher. Then that's what converts it into a pramana, so to speak, and handled by a teacher. Then it comes to you, and then so therefore it feels like somebody from outside is telling me what to do. Many people, today in the morning somebody said, I don't feel like that. Good for you, wonderful if you don't feel like that. But some people do feel like that. And especially in the West, this is a difficult thing, because one has not grown up in the tradition of parampara, guru, guru shishya, all these things. These are all relatively alien concepts, and something that one has to grow into. And so therefore the what comes in the way, this is what we have to see now, is what comes in the way for this Shraddha to take place is distrust. Because if Shraddha is trust, then what is there? What is the antidote to Shraddha? That is distrust. This is what is the antithesis of Shraddha, is distrust. And so distrust on what? Distrust, centered on the source that is giving me the knowledge. That is where the distrust lies. And the distrust is centered usually on the teacher or on the parampara, and the feeling is that, how do I know that this person knows? I call it guru allergy. The person has no problem seeking a teacher for what is that, dance classes, cooking classes. Cooking gurus are there, music gurus are there, dance gurus are of course there. Stock market person is also called stock market guru these days. And if all of them is not enough, there is one life guru, life coach, it's called. I met one fellow like that, and he's retained by celebrities. He told me, for a monthly fee, a very fat fee. So they can call him any time, from morning to night, they can keep on calling him. And then if they are having what is called a wardrobe malfunction, meaning they don't know what to wear, they have so many clothes. Their closet, their cupboard is like a bedroom in India. Okay, so then they don't know what to wear, and they call the person because they don't know. They cannot handle their own life. It's the problem of excess, not the problem of scarcity. And then the so the life guru. So people are not worried about seeking help. We can see that In the world, everybody is seeking some help from somebody or the other. You have tutors, you have gurus of all kinds for all various things. But then when it comes to the most important thing, which is knowing yourself, there is suddenly one develops hives, rashes, because the guru becomes very, very, like, oh my God, what are they going to do? How are they going to do this? And this is why Shraddha is talked about a lot in the Veda, including in the Sama Veda. We have this beautiful, mantra, Rathantara Samagana, and there, Shraddhaya, Shraddha. This is what is, told. Setum stara, Dustaran setum stara. Cross this bridge which is very difficult to cross. What is difficult to cross? Ashraddha. Ashraddha means lack of Shraddha, absence of Shraddha, opposite of Shraddha, any which way you take it, you know. And so this Ashraddha, is very difficult to overcome. So Tara means overcome. How do I overcome Ashraddha? By building the bridge of Shraddha. By introducing the opposite. And by pretending to have Shraddha, I deliberately then cultivate Shraddha. And since Shraddha is one's natural nature, natural, way of being, inhibited by anything from the past, uninhibited by all kinds of, difficulties. It is one's way of being, and so one's nature. And so it's easy. You look at a baby, it has Shraddha. It has Shraddha. Anybody will pick it up, it will go. The total helplessness is compensated by complete trust. Whoever the adult is, it'll just go. I'm talking for really small baby, not when it is 9 or 10 months it knows, oh, who are you? You're not my mother, you're not my father, it will say. So, but a small baby will just go to anybody. And that is, that is what the whole thing is. So here, the cultivation of trust is a very, very important, what is that? Interruption to, Shastra allergy, Guru allergy. So why does this Guru allergy come? I mean, you don't even know the Guru. So why do you distrust the Guru? Why would anybody distrust the Guru? Why does this resistance, distrust and fear come up? It is part of the, what is that? Regurgitation of authority issues from the past. Everybody has authority issues, correct? Issues with authorities means what? Parental issues. Because the Guru always somehow reminds one of, he's like a parent. Apparently, the Guru doesn't want to parent you, but there is some kind of a connection with the Guru, like a parent-like connection, and so it invokes all the difficulties that one may have had with the parents, and it invokes those particular issues. And those issues have to be settled, have to settle down, and those issues have to be addressed, and those issues have to be taken care of. Taken care of means resolved. Those issues have to be resolved properly, and when those issues are finally resolved, then the person is prepared, like Ashvalayana was. He had no doubt, he chose the teacher, and then all these things, the whole knowledge lined up for him. But we have to see the truth of this. The truth of this is, it's very, very obvious. As a child, maybe the mother was absent, father was neglectful or inconsistent, whatever, hypothetically speaking. And all that leaves an impression, and that impression is hidden. Thanks to Maya Shakti, this is the personal avarana, this is the personal unconscious that one carries, And so all these issues are hidden, and they come out when there is safety. You finally feel safe enough to feel unsafe, yeah. And usually they come out after a marriage, because somebody has committed to spending their life with you. Then that gives you a certain trust. And trust and intimacy means what? You trust them enough to show them your pain. you know that's how you show them the pain. And then so you want all these inner children, which are in the form of these truncated pains and sorrows, to be taken care of by the significant other. Not a good idea to outsource them to babies, for the significant other to babysit. Why? Because the significant other also has his or her own brood of inner children that he or she wants you to babysit. Okay, I'll babysit, you will not. And the other person will not. That's what is called the end of the honeymoon period. For a little while it's okay. After that it becomes very, 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 difficult. You have to deal with your own inner child by being the adult, having that space between yourself and the inner child. The inner child means this pain body, the body of pain, the body of feeling neglected, the body that feels, nobody loves me, abandoned, the body that has no self-esteem, the body that is, these are all, truncated needs, the frozen needs, unmet needs that are just put upon the teacher, the significant other. The teacher is another very kind of a close connection, an intimate situation, a close connection. And so the trust builds up along with all the expectations. So one wants the teacher to be a father. One wants the teacher to give what the father could not give, what the mother could not give. This is part of the natural Ishvara's psychological order. This is part of the psychological order. There is nothing wrong. But to recognize that this is wisdom. That to recognize this and to seek help is wisdom. Because if this help is not sought, if these things are not resolved, there is an inner split between the adult and the inner child, and then the adult wants the knowledge and the inner child wants to complain, and the inner child wants a hug, wants attention, wants love from the source of knowledge. This is, or wants to hang out with the guru, but the adult wants the knowledge. And all this our sages knew. Our sages were masters of raga dvesha psychology, every single psychology, inner child psychology. It was amazing. And we find this in the 8th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, where Indra, the ruler of all the gods, ruler of heaven, and Virochana, the ruler of the asuras, together go to Prajapati. Here it is Lord Brahmaji, there it is Prajapati, for knowledge. They hear, Prajapati sends out a tweet. And what does the tweet say? Atma apahata papma vijaraha vimrityuhu vishokaha. Kshutpipasa vihinaha. Meaning, Atma is free of all papa. You are free of all papa. Vijaraha, you are free of old age. Vimrityuhu, you are free of death. You have transcended death. Your nature is not to die. You are immortal. And all this they hear, it sounds wonderful. And they both, the asuras also say, I think somebody should go and get this knowledge. And then somebody should go to Prajapati. I think he's talking sense. And of course the asuras wanted this knowledge for a different reason. They wanted it for world domination. And then what about the suras, the various devatas on this side, the goodies, not the baddies. So the goodies said, no, we should get this knowledge for our own sake, and we'll appoint Indra because he is our ruler and we trust him, and he will bring the knowledge back and teach all of us. So they trot off together. I mean, they are arch enemies. They cannot stand each other. And whether they talk, they both go, whether they talked and exchanged their chapatis on the way, we never know. In the Upanishad is silent on the question, but they both show up at Prajapati's ashram at the same time. And what is very interesting is that the only Indra talks. Virochana does not talk at all. Virochana is like a copycat asura. Indra does namaskar to Prajapati. Virochana also does namaskar to Prajapati. Indra, says, whatever, and Virochana keeps quiet and just agrees. The funny thing is, both these fellows go to the ashram, and for 32 years they live there, and without even asking for this knowledge. They just go about, they just insert themselves into the ashram. And Prajapati must have been a very patient guru, because he lets them live there for 32 years, eating, drinking, doing nothing. And then after that, he asks them, "Hey boys, what are you here for? What do you hope to get?" Again Indra answers. And then after a while, the Prajapati just mystifies them on deliberately, because he sees these two people. One of them is an adhikari, qualified. The other one is a non-adhikari, full of raga, dvesha, etc. He's a non-adhikari. And so therefore what? So Prajapati cannot teach. And so he just shows them a cauldron of water and says, "Please look at the Atma. This is the Atma." And they both go away satisfied. But then Indra, because of, Sattvapatti, because he has a lot of sattva, comes back. He questions this and comes back. And only then the teaching starts, after he loses his Virochana. Virochana is symbolic of this inner child. Ah. So the unresolved asura within, or you can even say asuras, because this is after all Kali Yuga. It cannot be simple. One cannot just have one inner child. So there'll be lots of them. This is what the whole thing is. And to have this, to transcend this, what is that, the hold of the inner child. Some work is needed. Some inner work is needed. That is why the word Shraddha is followed up by Bhakti and Dhyana. Bhakti and Dhyana together become a certain kind of a sadhana. And in fact, bhakti includes dhyana, because after all it is manasam karma. It is a mental, activity for whose whose subject matter is Ishvara. After all, that is the case. But bhakti and dhyana are mentioned separately, because bhakti includes, many things which we are going to talk about. So this is what the sentence was. Tasmai cha hovacha, tasmai cha hovacha pitamahascha shraddha bhakti dhyana yogat avaihi janihi. And please know this. How? Through a combo. Yoga means tesham yoga, shraddha cha bhaktischa ध्यानञ्च तेषां योगः श्रद्धा भक्ति ज्ञान योगः तस्मात् अवेहि श्रद्धा भक्ति ज्ञान योगाद् अवेहि. So please know this. And how do you know this? You know this by it is a concerted combination of sadhana here. Remember what we have talked about so far. The sadhana does not produce the knowledge. Sadhana only prepares for the Atma Ajnanam to say goodbye and to go away. Sadhana does not produce the knowledge. Sadhana produces, if anything, a state of mind that is conducive to gaining this knowledge. This is what we have to remember. But without sadhana, there can be no knowledge. Because this is a prerequisite. If you want to go to college, you have to have a high school degree. Then if you want to do PhD, you have to have at least a bachelor's degree, many times a master's degree. Then if you want to do postdoc, you have to have a doctorate. Then only you can do a postdoc. You cannot, get out of high school and what are your plans? I think I'll do a postdoc. Oh, you have thought so far ahead. No, I think I'll do it right now. you know, unless unless you're a gifted person belonging to some genius club, this is not an option. You have to go step by step. And so here, what is a pratibandhaka for shraddha? What is a very difficult condition to cultivate shraddha, the distrust, the clamoring inner children for attention, the transference and the projection, all these things, this mishmash of pain from early childhood. That is what is unresolved pain from early childhood is showing up. That too is Ishvara. If we Ishvarize it, oh, is that a word? Now it is. So if you Ishvarize the pain, then you see only Bhagavan. And how to Ishvarize the pain? This is what is the next word, Bhakti. Bhakti, here Bhakti, Bhaja Sevayam. Bhajate Sevate. Sevate here means in the sense of not just, worship. Of course, let us take the most straightforward meaning. Bhakti means worship of Ishvara. Ishvara Aradhana is called Bhakti. Worship of Bhagavan in whatever name, whatever form you have, whatever, however you do it. And and then since it is a karma, there are many different ways of performing this bhakti. Bhakti is only as good as it is performed. Bhakti relies on karma, on action for its performance. And up till now, the person was what? Karta bhokta. We saw that in the first session itself. Like, somebody sent me a video of these 3 kittens, small kittens, and they were sitting somewhere, all 3 of them, and they were watching one ping pong match. 2 boys were playing, and then they were going like this, all in sync, like this. It was very interesting, and that's when I thought, karta bhokta, back and forth, all the time. And in the case of the kittens, it was cute. In the case of this person who is, going like a ping pong ball, karta bhokta, in between pramata, karta bhokta, manta, thinker, karta bhokta, something else, And so this is very difficult. And if supposing you had the, ability to produce the result of action, which you don't. And Bhagavan says this very plainly, Karmani eva adhikarahate ma phaleshu kadachana. You don't produce the result of action. Very interesting and a funny situation. It's a trap. It's an action trap, action reaction trap, because you are in charge of only one side of the equation, and the other side you cannot produce the result of action, but you are in charge of action. Ye kya baat hai? This is very, not fair at all. This is very unfair, you may say. And so therefore what? So now we have to see that, okay, if you were in charge of producing the result of action, if all the people who were agents of actions, who were identified as kartas, were able to produce the result of action, then we would not need the Upanishad at all. We would not need devotion. We would not need Shraddha. Forget Dhyanam. How do you spell that? We don't need anything. Why? Because we are in charge of our lives. I want $1 million, and I get it. And then, somebody else wants to own another corporation. They also get it. Somebody wants to, do something else. Go bungee cord jumping, skydiving. They do it. With that, they don't break any bones. They don't do nothing bad happens, because one is exactly how much effort one puts, that much result they get. Then there is no need for Upanishad, no need for prayer, no need for devotion. But the reason why this ping pong between karta bhokta is happening is precisely because there is a sense of helplessness. You cannot fulfill the desires. You cannot get rid of the discontent very easily. You cannot produce what you want. In fact, what you don't want, two helpings you get. What you want, you never get. This is what is called Murphy's Law. If anything is going to go wrong in your life, it definitely will go wrong. This is the situation. But then, here, bhakti again, is, as I told you, we already touched upon bhakti when we talked about the first portion of the Veda. Bhakti again, remints you, redefines you as a conscious agent, because that's the only recourse. Why? Because you can take care of the hidden, the visible variables. You're going for a job interview, and then you read up on job you find out all your experiences, you put together a resume, you apply, you're called for an interview, you find out who all is in on the panel to interview you, and then you google them up and then find out everything about them. All this you have done. But you go there, the job has already been given to whom? To the niece of the CEO. An inside job, literally. Why? Her karma, your bad karma. That's all it is. But I really wanted it in the better luck next time. That's all it is. Why? Hidden variable. This is what is the pratibandhaka. And the hidden variable is not sort of thrown like a curved ball by Ishvara. Ishvara doesn't have any dvesha or hatred towards you. The hidden variable is your own karma done in a previous life, which is mounting all kinds of difficulties right now. That's what the whole thing is. So, is there a parihara? Is there a remedy? Yes, there is. And this is what it is. Bhakti here. Devotion. Devotion for what? Devotion here is of two kinds. One is, devotion for all my kamyas, objects of desire. This is what the devotion people are, people are familiar with. When I am in trouble, I think of Bhagavan. When I am having a difficult time, I think of Bhagavan. When I want something badly, I think of Bhagavan. Like during exam time here, in India, the temples are all full of youth. Before the exams, they will all go there. Otherwise, you never see them. So this is what the whole thing is. Nothing wrong. Very important. This is a starting point. This is what is the first expression of this bhakti, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is called Artha Bhakti. It's a 911 devotion. 911 is the number for emergency in America. Yeah. So it's a 911, the person has Bhagavan on speed dial and emergency time, just like when you don't call 911 every day to chat with the operator. Hi, how are you? Is your day going well? Are you having a very busy day? How are things over there? How many accidents today? You don't do that. You only call in desperate times. And then so this 911 bhakta, udara hai. He or she is also exalted, Bhagavan says, because there should be a starting point. And from there one graduates slowly to a more evolved bhakti. Perhaps in the beginning there is more of a pragmatic evolution. Like one sees, okay, Bhagavan controls everything. He is the karta, dharta, niyanta. He is the controller of the whole universe. So I better invoke Bhagavan, and then one has some kind of a, what is that, partnership. You please be the sleeping partner. Bhagavan is laughing. Even Vishnu, who is normally lying down, is laughing, because Bhagavan doesn't sleep. Shayane sarvam vibharti, lying down without stress, sustains the whole universe. But anyhow, you don't do anything, this fellow says. And I will just call my, my company, I'll name it after you, Balaji Enterprises, and then what? And then, 50% is yours. I'll go to Tirupati when it opens, and right now it's closed. So when it opens, I'll go, and then I'll put some 50% of all the profits there. And as though Bhagavan is feeling very happy, oh, I'm going to get some donation, I'm going to get some money. No such thing. There is no flattery there, there is nothing possible. That's why Bhagavan becomes a very apt altar of surrender. Then from there one evolves. If one allows oneself, one evolves into wanting to know Bhagavan. Who are you? Kidrishosi Mahadeva. Oh Bhagavan, who are you? How are you running this universe? What is my connection to you? Did I come from you? Did you create me? Or am I one and the same as you? What is going on? This is again a very different, because here you are not wanting Bhagavan to gain something in life. You are wanting Bhagavan for the sake of Bhagavan. This is what is called a Jignasu Bhakta. Then finally, ultimately, the Jignasu evolves into what is called a Jnani. Through Shravanam, what you are doing right now, through listening, the Jignasu evolves into a Jnani. And then the Jnani is also a Bhakta, because the Jnani is still in a body mind sense complex. And the Jnani, what does the Jnani say? The Jnani says, I know that from the standpoint of this body, you are everything. I see you everywhere, and I know you are non-separate from me also. This is very, very beautifully expressed in the Bhagavad Gita. But the need for devotion, regardless of where one starts, is very, very important. Because even on the very practical level, what is causing the difficulties in one's life? Because as I said, there is two ways of, looking for, two ways of worship. Either you want Bhagavan for the sake of Bhagavan, or you want Bhagavan to gain ends in life. Both are okay, but both are valid. But the first one, wanting Bhagavan to gain some ends in life, what happens? As a result of that, if you want Bhagavan to gain some ends in life, whatever you get is finite. But if you want Bhagavan himself, then what you get is infinite. This is what you get is you, because you are that Bhagavan ultimately. We saw that in the earlier class. And so therefore, this is something to be assimilated, that this bhakti is anivarya, meaning it is you cannot go without it. So every jignasu, every mumukshu, every seeker of knowledge, needs to have this devotion. Ashvalayana is told, and if Ashvalayana is told, such an exalted sage is told to go have Shraddha, Bhakti and do some Dhyanam, what to talk of all of us? We better heed this. We better heed this advice of Lord Brahmaji, and then, make bhakti a centerpiece in one's life. And what does that entail? Making bhakti centerpiece in one's life means what? It entails, seeing the altar of surrender as a place to put all your pains and sorrows, the inner children, the fears, the tears. This is what is, and all the disappointments. Where are you going to take it? I told you already, if you take it to the significant other, then after, significant other will listen for a couple of times. After that, the word significant will drop from the relationship. You will be making the significant other into just other. Yeah. They will say, I'm out of here. You're always complaining. You don't listen to me. You're just keeping on talking of yourself. Who will want to stay with such a person, The only one who will listen is Bhagavan. That's why in our iconography in the Hindu, Agama Shastra, what do we have? All the deities are happily showing Abhaya Mudra, and they are having Smita Hasa. They are all smiling. Even if you abuse them, they smile. And they are saying, don't fear, I'm here. This is Abhaya Mudra. And they're all happily, smiling. And so it is instant psychology. It is the pain of the parents, the pain of the significant other, the pain of being being a jiva, a flotsam and jetsam in the ocean of samsara, which is but an ocean, as I told you. But one doesn't know that. Not knowing that, one is going glub, 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 I'm drowning, I'm drowning. And then what? And, Bhagavan here, becomes the super therapist. Vedanta is also super therapy, but before Vedanta is discovered, Bhagavan is the super therapist, agrees with you, just nods and smiles, doesn't disagree, doesn't judge, doesn't chastise. This is the place. And this bhakti is actually karma. It is karma directed, the expression of the disappointments directed in the form of worship. This is our tradition. That's why in the Sri Rudram we have we have some choice abuses for Bhagavan. Hey, point your arrow another way. Oh Rudra, take, look, the neighbor is also not following dharma. Point the arrow against him or her. Why are you after me? Drape, unfortunate fellow. No, Daridraha. Neela Lohita, you've got all these, red eyes, and they're all rolling in their sockets. And what a terrible vision you give. And what kind of a thing are you doing? What are you doing to us? How could you do this? This is all prayer in the tradition. It is just so profound. Because, when the pain is Ishwarized, when the pain, through a ritual called puja, Kayikam karma, through a ritual called, Parayana. What is that Parayana? Is just the reading of various mantras, the chanting of various mantras is called Parayana. And puja means a ritualized worship which has certain steps. You put the ghee this here, do this over there, and this is when you do this, and then you light the lamp. First you offer the fruits, then you light the lamp. All these things, there is some krama, order is there. And so all this, and then manasam karma I will not talk of now, because that is part of dhyanam, which we'll be discussing. Dhyana yoga, we have already, it's already there mentioned separately. So manasam karma, vachikam karma, both are, kaikam karma, physicalized action, ritual action, like putting a garland, offering fruits, offering, dressing the deity. All these things are, are there. Very, 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 very important. And through this, one's pains and sorrows recede. The inner child, this is drishtaphala. Every action has two kinds of results, drishta and adrishta. Adrishta invisible, drishta immediately sensed. And what is the drishtaphala? The inner children go to sleep with pacifiers in their mouth. They go to sleep. The ragadveshas in the form of the inner children do not bother a bhakta. Name bhaktah pranashyati, Bhagavan says in the Bhagavad Gita, my devotee is never ever destroyed. My devotee is not destroyed. And so, name bhaktah pranashyati. And very, very beautiful to hear this. And so then what? So so this kind of ritualized worship, has the drishtaphala. The drishtaphala is that I'm much more present, I'm much more mindful, I'm much more aware, and I have become a conscious entity. I have become an entity that is conscious of my needs and wants, and I am, going straight to the source for my needs and wants, instead of flouting dharma, instead of going against, ethics, ethical, moral ways of being. Very beautiful. And so important to understand this, so important. Very, very beautiful. So this is what is called drishtaphala. But then there is adrishtaphala. Adrishta means that which is understood, or that which manifests itself later, that which is invisible now. Adrishta. And what is the, so what is the adrishta here? The adrishta here is that, this karma of invoking Bhagavan takes away the pratibandhas which were put from the last life, prarabdha, etc., through other forms of karma. Very interesting. How does that happen? How does it neutralize my papa? It neutralizes the papa. Papa means difficult karma. It neutralizes difficult karma, bad karma, as we say. How does it neutralize it? Because the good karma, puja, etc., the enactment of bhakti is a good karma. Why? Simply because if you are not in front of the altar worshipping for 3 hours, if the person was not in front of the altar worshipping for 3 hours, perhaps they would have been busy gossiping, talking ill of somebody, robbing a bank. Who knows what they would be doing? But at least here they are sitting chanting Sahasranama, Vishnu Sahasranama. How beautiful! How nice! Very, very nice. And so this 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu are being chanted, and there is a connection, there is a awareness of this connection. One is bringing Ishvara into the life, one is removing the pains of the past. So this is, all drishtaphala. Adrishta here means, there is a kind of an effect generated, that effect of that karma, you know, generated now, the good karma attacks the other previous adrishta, which is ready to come out and deny this person the next job also after the next interview. Yeah, perhaps the person has had so many missed opportunities, missed interviews, missed jobs, whatever. And we know what happened last time in this hypothetical story. The niece of the CEO got it just because she happened to be there, and then they made up a story of how she was more qualified and they gave it to her. And then what? Next time there might have been some other thing happening, and then, instead the person prays, and then the adrishta of missing the job opportunities and always being on the wrong side of the opportunities, the wrong side of every kind of what is that, any kind of an opening. The one is, either too late or a bit late or whatever it is. It's never enough. This is the kind of some karmas are very chronic. This is the kind of a chronic karma that keeps on manifesting itself, you know or sometimes in certain other karmas, karmic patterns, the person gets the job but then has to leave it, or then something happens, something is there, and that same kind of chronic karma follows one into the pursuit of Vedanta also. Yes, possible. Because what? One wants to study, one finds the teacher also, and one likes the teacher, one likes the knowledge very much. But some pratibandhas keep coming. Something happens, you know, and is not able to make it. Okay, I couldn't make it this time. At least in the beginning, earlier people would physically drive or go somewhere and to sit and listen. Now you just have to open the computer. Thanks to Advaita Academy, everybody is online. Everybody who is known, who is about to be known, everybody. They have done an excellent job, an outstanding job of showcasing authentic teachers. This is not a small, feat. Not a small feat. They have a cornucopia of teachers. All you have to do is just click one or two buttons and you're there. you know but even to do that, some pratibandha comes, bell rings, phone rings, something happens, there's all kinds of distractions, and sometimes distractions are not there. Then you're wondering why nobody is ringing the bell, why nobody has called me. I've been sitting in the class. Why, I'm not getting any Facebook messages. All these things, these are all the ways in which one's own mind becomes a pratibandha, an obstacle to the knowledge. One's own body becomes an obstacle to the knowledge, wants to sit and study, but as soon as the opening mantra is chanted, the person nods off. Opening mantra becomes a lullaby, you know. And then, what? And then the closing mantra is a wake up call. Suddenly the person, it's like Suprabhatam, wake up call. And then what to do? Pujya Swamiji had a friend like that. They were studying Brahma Sutras together with a guru. There were only 3 students. And then this one was always, he was also a Swami, a young Swami at that time. And forgotten, his name, doesn't matter. But the story is what is important. So this was in the 60s in Rishikesh. So Pujya Swamiji would go along with his friend, and then this other man would also join, and this friend would always, as soon as the opening mantra was chanted, the friend would nod off and go to sleep, and when the closing mantra was chanted, he would wake up. And then again, it fell to Pujya Swamiji's lot to give him the gist of the lecture as they were walking back to their kutia. He would give him the gist of today's lecture. What did the teacher teach? What did I miss? This is what happened. And Pujya Swamiji did it very, very happily, because this is what was he thought it as an opportunity to deepen his own understanding. But look at the teacher's compassion and patience. The teacher first of all said, let him sleep, because sleep is because of his good karma. No need to wake him up. But then the teacher waited for about 18 months, allowing him to sleep and snore. If there is a class of 100 people or even 50 people, one person is snoring softly in the background, no harm. Nobody even notices. And in fact, when we teach meditation, half the class is asleep anyway. It's okay, if there's a big enough group. But if there's only 3 people and the person in the middle sitting right in front of you is do this, and you kudos to the teacher Swami Tarananda ji, again a very ancient teacher, and he put up with it. He put up with it for 18 months, and then one day he woke him up and said, ये सुनने की बात है, सोने की बात नहीं है. This is not a matter of sleeping, this is a matter for this subject matter is for listening. That's all he said, by way of chiding him. you know so this is a prarabdha, this is a pratibandha, this is an obstacle, because that student who always fell asleep in class, was very earnest, was extremely sincere, but somehow there was the body would not cooperate. It's a body pratibandha, mind pratibandha, sudden distractions, not able to focus, not able to, the dharana shakti, grahana shakti is not there, uchcharana shakti is not there, the ability to grasp is not there, the ability to talk about what has been grasped is not there. So many things come in the way, and therefore these are all because of previous adrishtas, previous invisible karmas coming out. And therefore I unleash a new set of karma in order to take care of these obstacles, so that I don't go away from this knowledge. Because sometimes people get angry with the teacher and go away, like Virochana did in the Chandogya Upanishad. He got upset and went left, or he thought he got wrong knowledge and left. Sometimes people get upset and leave before the knowledge takes place. And so now what do we want? We want to be want to have a single minded focus to be with the teaching, until this knowledge takes place, without doubt, error or vagueness. That is what we want. And so therefore what do? We make sure that we clean everything. We clean out the residual karma through conscious action of invoking invoking Bhagavan in a little altar. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Invoking Bhagavan, and then this is what is daily worship, and this daily worship becomes a form of inner shaucham, a kind of, because you have, what is that, you have soap for the body to clean the body, because when you go out it catches dust and it catches grime and all these things, and these days you can touch something and have the virus on the hands, and then what do? After coming home you have to wash for 20 seconds. You have to wash the hands till they fall off. This is what you have to do. This is what is called outer shaucham. There is all kinds of upayas. There is what is that called? There is soap and cleansers, antibacterial cleansers, all that is there. What do you do for the mind? This is a very important thing. That is where puja comes in. Navarina shuddhyati antaratma. What a lovely saying there is in Sanskrit. Not by water is the inner instrument, is what? Not by water is the inner instrument cleansed. Meaning the mind is not cleansed by water. It is cleansed by prayer. This is what the prayer is, the soap. Rama Nama, then any Nama that you take, the Nama is the soap. And this is what the whole, this is what cuts the cord of samsara and repeated births to eke out all these, to exhaust these karmas. Because what you want is the knowledge that falsifies the agent of doing, and when the agent is falsified, the karma is all falsified. And that is what one wants. One wants to be with the teacher, one wants to study without a gap, and for this reason the mumukshu, the jignasu's prayer is, may I see the other end of this knowledge, may I not go away half understanding everything. just half and half. That is not a good thing. So this bhakti is to cut the cords of adrishta, all the karmic cords that are coming from previous lifetimes, and difficult and chronic patterns are cut with the help of, these pujas, etc., or parayanas. Very, very important. And then, bhakti also towards the pursuit. Bhakti means a commitment. So a committed devotee one becomes of Bhagavan, and along with that, the second meaning of bhakti is that there is a committed pursuit. Vedanta is a committed pursuit. It is not Aya Ram Gaya Ram, and you cannot just sort of tell yourself kabhi kabhi mere dil mein Vedant ka khayal aata hai. That doesn't work. Once in a while I think of Vedanta. That doesn't work. There should be a committed exposure. That's how it is. It grows on you. In the beginning you like it a little bit, you like what you hear, you're at least excited to hear more, and then it grows on you. And then this way you allow it to grow on you, and so the bhakti towards the pursuit, that's why bhaja sevayam. Seva here is commitment. A commitment towards the pursuit, a commitment towards self-growth. This is also bhakti. Bhakti is also, translates into karma in the form of karma yoga. Finally, we have to see that. Bhakti translates in the form of karma yoga, karma done with the idea of self-growth. So if one is a seeker of Brahman, then what happens? You're not interested in anything else. No, but I am interested in many things. Yes, but that's why we have the two options. One is to take sannyasa right away, and which many people don't want to do. No problem. That's okay. And so what is the other option? Karma yoga. That's a committed lifestyle to gain this knowledge. It's not karma marga. No, it is karma yoga. Karma marga, it can be confused with, just people who do karma for the sake of getting some results. But here it is a yoga. Karma eva yoga. Karma which joins you to Ishvara. And only in this tradition can we have the profound expression, work is worship. Because it is worship fully done. The attitude with which I do the work is worship fully done. I see, I don't see myself, I practice dropping the doership by consciously invoking Ishvara as an agent of the action. That's why if you go to anybody's house in India and you praise their cooking, you praise their house, they will not say thank you. They will say it's God's grace, Guru's grace, elders' blessings, something like that, they will say. Even inside they may be feeling happy, but they will say this. So this is in the tradition. You bring in Ishvara as a doer, and then what? You say it's because of Ishvara is the agent of action. I am just an instrument. And then what? So the results of action we already saw come from who? Not you, Ishvara. And so what do you have to do? You have to get to the place of what is called glad acceptance, prasada buddhi. You have to get to the place of seeing everything as prasada. Just like when you go to the temple, one day you get vada, you don't say I don't like sweets and you throw it back at the priest. No, you just say okay, this is prasad, you go take it like that. You may not like it too much. It's Hanumanji's birthday. They have made a whole mala of vadas. He's wearing them, and then it is cut and given to you. The whole mala is cut and given to you. A garland of vadas. Vadas is some kind of a savory snack. And this person who we are talking about, this hypothetical person, only likes sweets, let us say. But then what is offered at the temple is a savory snack. But then you take it and you have the attitude of devotion towards what comes. This is a metaphor of accepting whatever comes in life. Oh, but that means I should know the karma makes me passive. Who said that? It's not that's so far from the truth. It's not the truth at all. Karma doesn't make you passive. Karma gives shock absorbers for things out of your control. We are not talking of things that you can control. Whatever you can control in your life, please do. You know, but we are talking of things that are out of your control. Chronic patterns, difficult emotions, you know, papa, duritas from other lives, difficult karma from other lives manifesting right now. All these are out of one's control. And if they are out of one's control, that what other choice do you have other than to accept it gladly? This is what is growth. No other choice. In the beginning you moan and groan and grumble a little bit aloud, okay, theek hai, no problem. But then after a while you settle with it and you say, okay, not now, not yet, maybe next time, maybe another time. This is growth. And so karma yoga means totally focused on the knowledge, and actions are done primarily for self growth, not for fulfilling wishes and ambitions. This is very important to understand. So what does that mean? That means, you may be a family person, you may be married, you may be having children, you may be having a job, all that is okay. But then, you don't make it a point, what is that? You give in. The more you give in, the more you gain. This is what it is. The more you lose, in the interactions on the worldly level, on the everyday empirical level, the more you gain in the form of self growth. I was giving this, I was making this point sometime in one time long back in Atlanta. And then there was a couple, then I said, in the course of this talk I was giving, I said, as a practical tip, I can tell people, please, don't go for winning arguments. Try losing an argument, especially with the spouse or the significant other. And then actually it's a win-win situation. The spouse is very happy with you. Oh, you agreed so nicely. I never thought you would agree. And then it's a win-win situation. Why? Because then Bhagavan is also very happy. So supposedly, because your own self, you are focusing on your self growth, and you are happy because you got self growth. Very nice. So I was telling this in the talk, and then two young, they were married, a young couple, both of them raised their hands together. And then I said yes, and they asked the question, who should lose the argument first? So, this is what it is. This is what it is. We make small things into big things every day. This is how the whole day gets spoilt. Small things become huge problem. And then you sleep over it, and the next day you laugh at yourself. Why did I lose it yesterday? It was such a small thing. I could just learn to let go. Here is where we recall Uparati, letting go, Titiksha, forbearance. Oh, but they are not doing what I want. Let them not do what you want. No, but they are my employee. Let them be your employee. Actually, they are Ishvara's employee, not yours. Tell them. You have so many choices. Review your choices. Tell them. Well, that will create, I have tried telling them, but it's of no use. That will create more problems. Okay, fire them, hire somebody else. No, who will you find? They are really good at what they do. Okay, option 3, keep quiet. Keep quiet. Do whatever needs to be done. Tell them again slowly, and then, see what happens. Let's see how it unfolds. And keep quiet in the face of the understanding that actually Ishvara is running. Pray. Keep quiet means resort to bhakti here. So many options are there, and in any case, in any situation, one day one option, another day another option may be more appropriate. This is what the human life is. It doesn't come with an instruction booklet. In this situation, do this. Troubleshooting. What to do if the spouse doesn't listen to me. What to do if this is not being done. What to do if I have mother issues or father issues. There is no instruction booklet. Life is lived, and in this expression, if one is a devotee, one learns to accept things that one cannot change. In fact, that is the serenity prayer. Oh Lord, allow me the grace to accept the things that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference between the things I can change, between the battles I can and should be fighting, and between those I should not even touch with a 10-foot pole. That's what it is. And if you are confused, pray for clarity before acting. This is what we would say. And so this is what is the mental soap. So this is in a way a bahiranga sadhana. Bahiranga sadhana, bhakti is a bahiranga sadhana because it relies on karma for its expression. Karma is bahiranga, means an outward, relies on action for its expression. And so then you have karma yoga, where you are out and about in the world, you're interacting with people, you're growing into a compassionate, accommodative, non-reactive, non-demanding person. This is what Ashvalayana was, and Ashvalayana is told to become all this before gaining the knowledge. This is what is needed to qualify for this knowledge. Otherwise this knowledge will not come. You may have the best teacher, you may have Lord Brahmaji come and teach you this very Upanishad, but nothing will happen. Why? Because there is no preparation. The prerequisites have not been met. And so this is, this is how one grows. This is what is called bahiranga sadhana, an outwardly focused sadhana, where you are practicing non-reactivity. You want to say something to them, but you know it's not worth it, and so you keep quiet. You're practicing accommodation. Yes, they've done a bad job, but maybe they're having a bad day. Let me let it go and let's see tomorrow what happens. And then, and you're growing into a compassionate person. You're able to see what is going on. And all that is more important than having your way, which is just the way of the ahankara. For 5 minutes you are shining in your glory, and you have, made everybody kowtow to you, and dominated over them for 10 minutes. This is not a win-win situation. In fact, one is a double loser. One loses out preparing for Vedanta, and one loses out in that situation also, because there is so much bad taste in your mouth and the other people's mouth as well, as a result of this interaction. And so therefore, this karma yoga is very important, because it's a form of bhakti. It's a manifestation of how to live in the world and not be afflicted by it in the everyday life. This is what is called bahiranga sadhana. And the sadhana is this, karma yoga is for chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi means the soap that cleanses. Karma yoga is the soap that cleanses the mind and rids it of strong preferences, strong prejudices, and then, where all of them settle down, they lose their bite, and it rids it of, what is that called? The kama, krodha, kama we've already said, raga, dvesha constitute kama, krodha, anger, lobha, avarice, greed, and then moha, delusion, subjectivity, mada, arrogance, and then finally matsarya, jealousy. All these are example of difficult emotions that need to be mastered, that need to be conquered. So this is what is, this is what is called chitta shuddhi, where the heart is cleansed of these emotions as a result of prayer and action, where the prayer is, where you grow from being a person who prays to becoming a prayerful person. A prayerful person is the one whose attitude towards anything that one does is one of worship. This is what the whole thing is. This is what is called bahiranga sadhana, an outward focus for self-growth. Then finally we have the last word, dhyana. This is antaranga sadhana, meditation. Dhyana means meditation. It is antaranga sadhana, an inward based sadhana, an inward focus. Inward means to understand the truth of oneself, to prepare oneself to understand the means, to gain a say over the mind. So, Bahiranga sadhana, like karma yoga, ritualized worship, puja, etc., gives what the prasada called chitta shuddhi, a heart that is not always, in a constant turmoil, conflict, and discontentment. That is the heart that is ready for Vedanta. Where the Virochanas, the Asuras, the Rakshasas, the demons, have all been driven away through through the person becoming humble, becoming a devotee. And then the Antaranga sadhana here is for what is called Chitta Naischalyam. Nishchalasya bhava. Nischala means an unmoving mind. Otherwise, the mind is always moving. A fact that was not lost on Arjuna. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna. He complains. Pramadhi balavat dridam. Tasyaham nigraham manye. Vayoriva sudushkaram. He says this in the middle of the 6th chapter, where he is being taught about meditation by Lord Krishna. And he complains, what are you talking about? The mind is so, what is that? It's such a, if, it flits from thought to thought. It's such a fleeting thing. It doesn't even sit for 1 second. It's worse than a butterfly. At least the butterfly sits on a flower for long enough for you to see and admire the design on its wings. But this mind doesn't even sit for a second. It's restless, chanchala. And then pramathi, it is stubborn. Dridam, it has a mind of its own. That's why it's called, the only thing we can say about the mind is never mind. It's out of my hands. I can't do anything about this. And then you say, oh, grasp the mind, oh, Arjuna. How to grasp it? If you give me the task of going outdoors and getting a fistful of air, I'll happily bring it to you. I can bring you the air in a fist, and then give you here is that. That is easier accomplished than what you are asking me to have a say over the ways of the mind. This is not mind control. You can't control. You can just say, having a say over the ways of the mind, very, very difficult. And then Lord Krishna agrees. Yes, it is chanchala. Yes, I understand. But he gives an upaya. He gives a parihara. He gives a solution. And what is the solution? He gives 2 words which are very beautiful, wonderful. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. Yes, the mind is stubborn. Yes, the mind is restless. Yes, the mind is fleeting from thought to thought. But there are 2 ways in which you can conquer the ways of this mind. And what are those 2 things? One is abhyasa, another is vairagya. Abhyasa means repetition. And that's why in dhyana, what do we say? We repeat Om Namah Shivaya. This is what. So the thoughts go in a random sequence. And even though we say there is no rhyme or reason, there is rhyme and reason. There is reason which may not be known, and there's definitely sometimes there is rhyme. Why? Because the fellow saw a Honda on the street, and then immediately he thought of bonda. Bonda is a fried snack which tastes very good, in the rainy season. And so why Honda and bonda rhyme? Simple is very many times this happens. There is some kind of a rhyme there, a hidden rhyme. And there is also a reason why it goes, the mind leapfrogs from thought to thought to thought. You think it leapfrogs, but there is some logic there. There is a reason there. That is not known to you. It is hidden from you. And so therefore what? So therefore here, the mind is put on a diet of the mantra received from the teacher. Then you receive the mantra from the teacher, and then you put the mind on the mantra diet, and you say, okay, I'm going to sit for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, however much you are comfortable with in the beginning. I'm going to just chant the mantra. The mind, what does the mind says? Yeah, right, go ahead. I have my own thoughts, pun intended. I have my own fantasies. I have my own thoughts that I'm going to think. You keep chanting the mantra, good luck, Mind doesn't cooperate. That's why abhyasa. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. These are all not just made up mantras, these are all mantras, ancient mantras, given to rishis by other rishis and given by Bhagavan. All these things are there. Om Namo Bhagavate, Dakshina Murtaye. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Aim Hrim Shrim Klim Dum Durga Yai Namaha. This is all ancient mantras, and they have power because all the people in the tradition have been chanting them. All the gurus have been chanting them, and the gurus give it to the shishyas, and the shishyas then become gurus and give it, and it's an endless chain. So the mantra has power, and then you chant once, the mind says, okay, I'll go along with it. What is that? It sounds interesting. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Ishaya Namaha. Okay, I'll say that once. That's why it's a mental exercise. Manasam karma dhyanam. So the mental exercise is the subject matter of which is Ishvara. That's why it is a form of worship. So the mind says, okay, I'll humor. The mind and the Hankara, now the ego, are great friends, and the mind says, okay, I'll humor this person. Okay, Om Namah Shivaya. What should be the next thought? Om Namah Shivaya. Oh no, I have to do this again? Alright, fine. The person is not letting me see a movie. The person is making me sit here. Alright, I will say it one more time in my mind. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. And then what? Oh, I wonder what's playing there. I wonder what's happening over there. I wonder who is on Facebook. I wonder what's happening over there. All these, distractions come. That the distractions come is not the problem. The problem is to go along with the distraction. So when the distraction comes, you have to catch hold of the mantra. The mantra becomes the rope, for the mind that is falling off this cliff. So you catch hold of the mantra and pull yourself back. Again, Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya, whatever the mantra is. I'm just using Om Namah Shivaya because it's short. Om Ishaya Namaha. And sometimes even you can say Om Namaha. Om is the name of Bhagavan. That too is a mantra. And so Om Namaha, Om Namaha, Om Namaha. Beautiful. And so this is abhyasa. And the more one does this abhyasa, when the one is immersed, the chanter and the chant become one. In fact, they are one. They are the same consciousness, out of which the chanter as an entity recognizes himself, herself, and the chant as an object is also recognized, as a result of which who is not, as the result of understanding which consciousness, which is neither the chanter nor the chanted, nor the process of chanting, which is free of all three, and then but which sustains everything without being any one thing. This is very big, and this is what is one part of this, what we call dhyana, abhyasa. Abhyasa is having a say over the ways of the mind by repeatedly putting them on a diet of mantra, a discipline, a mental discipline of replacing the random thoughts that mechanically go from one thing to another with the name of Bhagavan repeatedly. And if distractions come, you replace it again, you go back again and again and again and do this. This is what is called abhyasa. And then Lord Krishna also says another thing, vairagya. And what is vairagya? We already saw a little bit vairagya in the earlier class, and in the class on the qualifications. Yesterday we saw that. And so vairagya here means letting go. The more one identifies as a devotee, the less one is bothered by the things that are happening in the world. Because you know what? The truth is, you can never make the world into something perfect. Because it's already perfect. It may not be perfect for you, but it is perfect in the way it is manifest. Sthane. It is exactly how it should be. It is exactly how it, how it is made, including coronavirus, for the certain kind of transformations to take place. Perhaps we were asking, when will the avatara come? Bhagavan promised in fourth chapter, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, whenever there is neglect and dereliction of ethics and dharma and morality, I will come. Perhaps, this coronavirus is Bhagavan, it's an avatara. It is amazing. It's really, really amazing. And so, this is what the whole thing is, to be able to see this as Ishvara, to be able to see everything as the Lord. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat. This is the opening words of the Isha Upanishad. Very, very beautiful. And so therefore, we have to look at this vairagya from the standpoint of this whole universe and your own place in it. You can do only so much. Whatever you can do, you do with a full heart. Let it go. We don't become micromanagers. You can suggest something, and the other person also has free will. They may not do it. Very likely they will not do it. And then what? Either you do it yourself or you let it go. Why? I can browbeat them and bully them. Yes, you can do that, but then you can't do that and then also be a desirer of this knowledge. Those two things cannot happen at the same time. The person who wants this knowledge will learn to conduct themselves very differently than the average person who is not interested in this knowledge. And it's not easy to qualify for this knowledge. Who will have Shraddha, Bhakti, Dhyana, Yoga? Very difficult. Very, very difficult. Because, as the Bhaja Govindam laments, which is, Bhaja Govindam muses. Which is the Bhaja Govindam is a text, very beautiful text attributed to Adi Shankara, and then there, the writer muses, which is a good time, which is a good place, which is a good way to study about Brahman, which is the good age group. Maybe we should start them young. As a small child, the child can be taught Tattvamasi. No. Why? Balastavat krida saktah. Because the child is obsessed with play. Oh, maybe young age, because the mind is sharp. Young adult. Tarunastavat taruni raktah. The young adult happens to be interested in only one thing. What is that? Another young adult. That's all. No other thing. No other thing. Vedanta will not go into the head. Oh, now I know why our elders said you have to retire and you have to finish all your quote unquote duties and then go and then sit in front of the teacher. Provided you can still sit at that age, okay? Yeah, and then, and then maybe that's what it is. Vanaprasthis, or this is what is that? This is the age, retirement age. And then Bhaja Govindan says, Vriddhastavat chinta magna. So the Vriddha is always worried. Will the people, how will I die? Will it be a short, quick affair? Will I get corona? Or will I just, will I linger for a long time in bed? Now that will be terrible. But then, if I just pop off suddenly, I will not have time to say goodbye. So, be very difficult which to choose. And how will my children behave? Will they still remember me after I'm gone? Will they do as I say? Will they, fight over the property? These are the worries. Okay, yesterday one more muscle went. Today I'm having a pain somewhere else. This is what is the obsession of the elderly person. And then the author laments in the last line, Pare Brahmani kopina lagnaha. Nobody is interested in Parabrahma. Nobody is interested in Brahman. Not easy. That's why this work is 9/10 of the knowledge is preparation. 1/10 is the knowledge, gaining the knowledge. So therefore, the more Shuddhi, Antakarana Shuddhi and Chitta Naishchalyam, because you want to be able to listen without the mind going off somewhere, playing hooky and going off somewhere. And then like that person in the Chandogya Upanishad who ended up, who was who couldn't see, and who ended up in a watchtower of the palace. He had come for some kind of a function in the palace ground, some fair, and then he was just saying, I'm lost, I'm trapped in this tower. And he came to the sentry. The sentry said, your village is on the other side. This is the road to the, inside the palace. You don't want to go here, but you want to go to the other opening. Oh, but I can't see, the light is falling, what should I do? And he says, he takes him and puts him against the wall. Just keep feeling the wall. It's this watchtower is round, and then after a while you'll run out of wall, no more wall, and then what will happen? Then the opening has come, and then you go. And then this fellow turns up again after half an hour, blinking and saying, oh, revered sir, can you please show me the way to my village? I live here. What? Are you again? I showed you half an hour ago. What happened? No, I didn't. Oh, it's you. Okay, I just kept doing what you said, but there was no opening. He says, impossible. I see the opening right from where I'm standing. Did you ever take your hands off the wall? Yes, I had a little bit of an itch, so I scratched myself. When he scratched himself and he kept on walking, that was the moment the opening was missed. This is what happens if the mind is all over the place. Panchadashikara with Swami Vidyaranya says this, that that fantasy and Vedanta don't go together. Whether they are positive fantasies, daydreaming, manorajya, or negative fantasies that frighten you, they don't go together. But that's why this Chitta Naishchalyam is the gift of Dhyanam. Chitta Shuddhi is the gift of other forms of bhakti talked about, earlier. And then of course we have already seen Shraddha. So Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yogad Avehi, he is told. And then later on the text goes into one more thing to gain as a qualification. The text thinks, the Upanishad says that you have to become a sannyasi or close to a sannyasi, have complete vairagya, and vairagya is highlighted in the next mantra, which I hope some other time we can. It's also a beautiful mantra, na karmana na prajaya na dhanena, etc. Sometime we can perhaps, Bhagavan will give us the opportunity to study that. Thank you very much. Om Tat Sat. I'll say the closing prayer. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadagya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Swaminiji, again for very wonderful, so much food for thought. I should say. We have few questions. I think 8 to 9 questions are there.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Can we go a little over if needed?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is Shatarudriyam? Shatarudriyam is a mantra in the Yajurveda, both in the Krishna Yajurveda and the Shukla Yajurveda. It comes, and then it is it is what I was talking about. It is a prayer to Bhagavan in the form of Rudra. Ru stands for Rudanam, the one that makes you cry, and then Rodayati, and then Rudanam Dravayati. First makes you cry, and then when you when you cry, then gives you a hanky to wipe your eyes. So this is Rudra, and then so this is a beautiful, what is that? It's actually fully Vedanta. It's a beautiful prayer, very very nice. I hope you have the chance to study it sometime. Does the Veda describe the geographical location where Brahma resides, where in the solar system or the cosmos, and how do the physical body of the saint went up to Brahma, whether there is any description of the Sukshma Sharira? No, This Upanishad doesn't go into that. The Akhyayika is simply that Lord Brahmaji is invoked as the teacher and Ashvalayana is put as the student for obvious reasons, so that this knowledge is authenticated and this knowledge is validated for all of us who are doubting Thomases, especially in Kali Yuga. So therefore we need to trust this knowledge, and it's helping our Shraddha to see that these are sages. Since it's a story, we don't, there is no location. Yeah, there is no location. There is, Brahmaloka. All these things are not, it's not the purport of the Upanishad to focus on the geographical location. The purport is to make you understand that you are all pervasive, and you are, free of, you're free of all afflictions and mortality. And then Sukshma, this is how that way, same way we can wonder, how did Nachiketa go to Lord Yama? Correct, his father said to Lord Yama, how did he go? And that also is a very interesting question. We don't know how he went, but the question is he went. That's all we need to know. Yeah, because it doesn't discuss. The Upanishad is a lady of few words. It doesn't, she doesn't talk about all these things. She goes straight to the point. Yeah, Upanishad is female. Okay, yeah, that's why. Source of knowledge always female. Now, starting with the mindful praying, mantra chanting, soon it becomes unmindful. How to make this mechanical practice mindful? Stop. Yeah, when you understand, it becomes mindless. Stop, get up, go have a drink of water, go jump up and down, do whatever you need to do, run a small errand, take a walk, come back, wash your face, come back, sit down again. That is the only way to, to do that. A little more clarification on dharma. Dharyate iti dharma, that which upholds everything. Dharma is a universal matrix of norms which cannot be enforced, and the only way to enforce it is to practice it yourself. That's why in English it is called the golden rule. It is known as the golden rule, and the golden rule means that, you have a, what is that, you don't do unto others as you don't want them to do unto you. This is what is dharma, you know. And then killing harmful germs is himsa. How do we justify the use of insecticides and chemicals to keep them away? Yeah, killing harmful germs is in himsa. And why insecticides? Even regular sweeping and mopping your house, every day, that also kills so many germs that are not even visible to the naked eye. So there are, different ways where this is what is called pancha papa. Pancha papa means these five, accruing of five difficult karmas through the everyday things. What are they? They are sweeping, mopping things. Marjanam is sweeping and mopping, and then what is that? Peshanam. Because in the olden days they used to this thing, the grain, pound the grain, peshanam, pounding the grain. And when you pound the grain, so many things may be there, and everybody who's non-vegetarian may become who's vegetarian may become non-vegetarian, we don't know. But you pound the grain, that pounding, sweeping, washing the clothes, washing the vessels, all these things, washing outside, all these things, kill a lot of things. So for this pancha papa, there are the nitya karma is the prayashchitta, the atonement, because some things you cannot help. You cannot coexist with insects and harmful things like that. And so you have to keep, you try to use herbal things, you try to escort them out of the house, and then if you inadvertently kill them, you do some prayashchitta by giving up something you like, or through prayer, through everyday prayer. Okay, yeah. Then very difficult to assimilate and plan to put it into practice. Request you to suggest us a lifestyle and a discipline which will lead us to self-realization. This is what it is. The lifestyle is karma yoga, and That is what we have talked about at length today. Karma yoga means you allow the, you do whatever you do it for the sake of this knowledge, or for the sake of self growth. And then you winning small battles and then wanting something, it doesn't matter. You set your eyes on the big prize, and then that is what the whole thing is. That is the lifestyle. That's the only lifestyle that prepares one for knowledge. And then you keep listening, and you say it is difficult, and yes, it may look difficult in the beginning, because one is not used to thinking like this, one is not used to paying so much attention, and therefore it is difficult to what is that, uh, it is difficult in the beginning, but you keep with it. The perseverance is the key. That is the biggest key. In fact, the recently one more rover went to Mars from NASA, and it's called Perseverance rover, and, and that's what everybody needs to become. Rover means seeker, and perseverance is tiksha. Keep with it, and one day you will, it will reward you. Yeah. Email, phone number, Nitin can give. Can you please type my email for people who want? Yeah, that will be nice. um, I have gone from one guru to another organization, and I find I don't give my entire Shraddha to one. Some have a lot of puja, some chanting, some kriya. I love to listen to discourses and reading the text. I take some learning from each guru and select the practice I prefer. I don't think this is right. Please guide. Well, right now it may not be right or it may not be wrong. Let's not make a judgment on it. Right now, this is what it is, and there are reasons for that. And and this is a good place. I mean, I commend you for being so candid and being, to be able to talk about this. Amazing. You are really amazing. So you have obviously done a lot of self reflection on it and introspection. So you are clearly a serious seeker and an introspective one, and I wish you the best. But right now the only thing to do is to accept that this is how it is, and there is a reason for it. And you can look at the reason from the past to see that if there was any kind of an instability in the past experiences as a child, that could also come in the way of sticking to one particular mode of being. And but right now it's okay. Every guru is a blessing. Every teacher is a blessing. You keep listening to whoever you would like to listen to, and then a day will soon come where all these difficulties will just go away. It'll go away, and then I will pray that that day comes very soon, and you find your life's purpose fully blessed with Shravanam. Okay, yeah. Then another one, Atma Ajnana and Anyatha Grahanam is the cause of bondage, and self knowledge is the only antidote. Yeah, not anecdote, antidote, I think you mean to say. Karma Yoga gives Chitta Shuddhi. Please explain about how and where does bhakti fit in. Yeah, Karma Yoga is done through bhakti, it's not a separate thing. Bhakti, even though you see Swami, what was Vivekananda, when he was talking about the Vedas to make it simple for the people, he split them into two more margas: Bhakti Marga, Raja, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Hatha Yoga. All these things became, they don't have Upanishadic parlance. They're not mentioned in the Upanishad. Upanishad, which are our primary texts, only talk about two paths. One is, Karma Yoga, and then the other one is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means you drop everything. You burn all bridges and you just stand in front of the sky and the trees and say, I give this all up for the sake of knowledge. And we don't have, in our tradition, we don't have monasteries upkeeping us, we don't have anybody giving, monthly stipend, nothing. It's just you and the sky, the Swami and the sky. That's all it is. Whatever comes, you live on that. That is, that is what the whole thing is. So then, that must be understood. And then the other one, if one is not ready to burn the bridges and the boats, one has to go through what is called karma yoga, which is a disciplined life for chitta shuddhi. And the karma yoga is nothing but bhakti. Jnana is nothing but bhakti. Jnana yoga is also bhakti, because it is the topic here is Ishvara. And so the devotion is common to both. We don't see devotion in the traditional sense as a separate path, because as I mentioned in the lecture also, that the devotion finds its expression through karma, through action. So the devoted action is called karma yoga. So then that is where bhakti is. Bhakti is to understand the source of one's frustration, where to take that frustration and the pain and the sorrow. You take it to Bhagavan, leave it at the feet of Bhagavan. That is what is bhakti. Without that, there is again no preparation, no chitta shuddhi. Okay? Yeah. I hope that was clear. Now, how important is it to know the meaning of mantras we chant? Will one still be able to reap the benefits by chanting without knowing the meaning? Yes. Yes, because these are ancient mantras, and they have, they have their own history, and yes, you can do that. But if you want to know the meaning, then it is even more efficacious, because you can recall the meaning as you are chanting it. Next one, you said that interested in Vedanta is karma, but not having concentration is also karma. So what is the use of a beneficial circumstances which we are not able to use? Does it mean Ishvara's grace is not powerful? No. It means that we need to use our free will a little more. Ishvara's grace is there, we have to tap into it. Ishvara's grace is like an underlying, water, underground water. You have to dig. Yeah, sometimes you have to dig deep. The water will then come out as a spring. That is Ishvara's grace. You have to earn the grace. And earning the grace means, using your free will for the concentration, for perseverance, for the committed pursuit. Very, very important. And using all the things, all the tricks that one has. Udyamam sahasam dhairyam buddhishaktif parakramah shadete yatra vartante tatra devas sahayakrit. So your participation, this sukta says, what is that? Udyamam, hard work, put the right effort at the right time. Sahasam, enthusiasm. Dhairyam, courage. Buddhihi, all mental resources. Shaktihi, physical resources. Parakramah, the ability to take the project to the end, whatever work you're doing. Shadete yatra vartante, where these 6 things reside, tatra devah sahayakrit, there only the God lends a helping hand. Yeah, Ishvara's grace is very powerful. He's waiting for you to step up. That's what is happening. Does the karma yogi has to necessarily be a grahastha if they are not really ready for sannyasa? No need. No need. You don't have to be a grahastha. Yeah, if you're not ready for sannyasa, you can just continue to be a karma yogi and do whatever you're doing. Yeah, the Shastra is very clear on that. Yeah. Then Durga mantra request. Om, Aim, Hrim, Klim, Shrim, Dum, Durga Yai Namaha. So I'll type it. I think I can type it here. Om, Aim, Hrim, Klim, Dum, Durga Yai Namaha. Very effective to chant in the age of the coronavirus, because it is Durga. It is in the form of Durga. Yeah. I pressed send. Did it come? Nitin, did it come?
The chat box has been disabled. I think that
No,
is
I
why.
didn't do it in the chat box. I did it in the question only.
Okay, then it would have gone.
It
Yes,
should
yes.
have come.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you again, Swaminiji.
Um, um,
The whole weekend was very fantastic, and I have no words to describe. And we have all been very fortunate to have this online, listen to this online Shravanam and understand the meaning of Kaivalyam. I think this is the beauty of Vedanta, that even a single word can, hold within it the entirety of knowledge. Just single word can convey the whole infinite number of meanings. So thank you very much for.
Thank you, Nitin, and thank you for being a captive audience. I made you into a captive audience. Om Namah Shivaya.
It's my fortune, Swaminiji. Viewers, with this, we come to the conclusion of this session, this week's Weekend with Wisdom. Next week, we will invite another guest for taking weekend classes. Uh, Check Advaita Academy's website for the online classes that we are running continuously, and for announcements for next week's events. Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Om, Om. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. All the best.